This morning, we have an IEBC that is fully complete and should be ready to conduct an election, starting with the very many by-elections and even preparing for the next general election in the country. A chairperson and 6 commissioners went through the entire process. They were picked by the selection panel. They were vetted by Parliament. They were properly gazetted by the President. They were sworn into office. Erastus Edung Ethekon is the chairperson. We have Ms. Fahima Arafat Abdallah, who's 32 years old, from Lamu, as the new vice chairperson. She was picked by the commissioners. Francis Odhiambo Aduol, Hassan Nur Hassan, Mary Sorobit, Moses Muhwana, and Anne Derito are the other commissioners. What work do they have ahead of them? How many things do they need to do to juggle? And what are the things that were happening, even with the secretariat, that did not require the commissioners to be in office, and all that? Somebody who is really well versed with matters of election management and preparedness is our next guest, Mulle Musau, who is from the Election Observer Group. We said, Mulle, that we are going to call you ELOG, not ELOG.
ELOG.
No, ELOG is okay. Actually, we have a lot of debate in the office about whether it should be ELOG or ELOG.
Is it elections or elections?
It's elections.
It's elections.
Okay. Elections.
There is elections and the elections. Is it tomato or tomato? It's the same story.
Karibu sana. Jano is going to welcome you with the day's quote. Listen to it and let's see whether it makes sense to you.
Right. This was said by Nelson Mandela 20 years ago in Trafalgar Square in the UK. And he said, poverty and inequality have to rank alongside slavery and apartheid as social evils. I'll say that again. Poverty and inequality have to rank alongside slavery and apartheid as social evils.
Yeah, very true. Because how do people live? Well-deserved lives in a world where, and when you think about the poverty in the world, and I think that's where Mandela was coming from, it's nearly imposed poverty. It is not poverty which you just find yourself deprived. It is, if you look at all the colonization project, the colonial project, the neo colonization project, which is going on even up to now, people are impoverished, not because they can't be able to work for themselves, but because the system works in a manner that conspires to deprive them. Yeah.
Oof. That's a very good one. It's a very good. This one today, I am in agreement.
Then I need to throw you off this week.
Right. Sometimes Eric will be like,
Kisungu kubwa. Kisungu kubwa. I just get lost.
Nakamna moja this week too.
To scatter us.
Okay. Erastus Edung Ethekon was sworn in as the chairperson of the IEBC. We're going to hear him when he spoke after taking the oath of office, which was, of course, administered by the Chief Justice, as is required by law. So we'll hear from the new chair of the IEBC and the Chief Justice when he was now swearing them in and telling them, go forth and serve Kenyans. Let's start with the chairperson. Okay, we've got an issue. You may decide he hang kidogo. But we'll come back to it.
IEBC does not hang the same way.
Yes.
Kwanza on the day of elections, which we'll talk about. I mean, we see it happening all the time. Yeah. All those machines hanging on the day of the elections.
Exactly.
But first, Mulle, what is ELOG?
The Elections Observation Group is a domestic platform which has been set for citizens to be able to observe their own elections. Put simply, that is what it is. Because what we do is that we basically train Kenyans, ordinary teachers, ordinary farmers, ordinary students, to go to a polling station, collect data from that particular polling station, and then we make an analysis of what they're able to find. So it is Kenyans watching their own vote, and ELOG is basically then a platform that makes that happen.
So basically observers.
Domestic observers, yes.
How many organizations are involved?
We have 18 organizations currently. Some of them are national organizations such as the Catholic Bishops, the National Council of Churches of Kenya, but you also have civil society organizations, CRECO, FIDA Kenya. We have marginalized. The idea is to be as inclusive as possible, so United Disabled Persons of Kenya, Youth Agenda, and quite a raft of other youth organizations which participate in the process. process, just to ensure that we cover as far the constituencies, basically, which want to observe electoral processes.
As far and wide as possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, computer imeacha kuhang.
Okay.
Polling stations are now open. Let's listen to the new chairperson of IEBC and the Chief Justice.
I wish to assure Kenyans that their voices will not only be heard, but they will also count during this, the coming elections. Credibility, ladies and gentlemen, of our elections depends on our collective commitment to the rule of law, to fairness, to the principle that every Kenyan matters.
You are taking office at a time when our nation is undergoing a period of great reckoning. A moment when Kenyans, especially our young people, are expressing discontent, are expressing frustrations with public institutions.
Do you agree with the Chief Justice that this IEBC is coming into office in a different time, and then there's high expectation and pressure?
First, I don't envy those commissioners who've gotten themselves to that position at this particular time, and I totally agree with the Chief Justice that they are coming at a time where they are going to be the main agency that's going to be on the spotlight in the next 2 years or so, because there'll be arbiters in a process where there are so many expectations, there are so many issues which need to be dealt with. Remember, we have been overtaken by time, even in terms of some of the electoral processes. So they're coming at a time where they have no time to rest. And then among the things that they have to do is to instill public confidence in electoral processes at a time where nobody believes in those electoral processes. So yes, I totally agree with the Chief Justice. They have their work cut out
for them. Let me pull on something you said there. Voter confidence, confidence in the public. I'll go back with an election observer. It's a term we hear quite often.
Yes.
But who is an election observer? We see them coming here when we have elections. We see some of our leaders and people from civil society go out into other places to be election observers. Who is an election observer? What role do they play in the electoral process? Who can be an election observer?
Okay, first things first. So everybody who participates in an electoral process should be an observer. We would want to see that 22.1 million voters who registered the last time being observers. So whatever numbers we're going to get in the new register, they ought to be out there watching the vote. Everybody, it's a responsibility of citizens to watch the vote. But to go to the technical the definitions of it, is that we have what we call citizen observers and we have international observers. The international observers are organizations that sit together, feel that they have an obligation to be able to see and oversee or monitor and track electoral processes in another country. Remember, we are one world, so there's a lot of interest of the Kenyan elections by people out there. So they'll come together, they'll put themselves together in an organization or in some team, the EU, for instance, and they'll come over here, they'll observe electoral processes using our standards, and then be able to report on that process based on what they were able to observe. Citizen observers on the other side are the citizens themselves. Like I had earlier explained, we will recruit any person on the ground. We use these institutions that I was talking about to be able to go to every corner of the country and pick in every constituency. We make sure that we do have, actually what our starting point is the ward level. So the 1,450 wards, we ensure at least we have what we would say boots on the ground. People who can be able to observe, we train them so that they can be able to observe the process. We give them tools that they can be able to use to collect that data, and then that data now is processed so that we can be able to form an opinion. So in terms of, from a technical point of view, then you would want somebody to be trained to ensure that they're able to get you the correct information, the correct data that allows you to make, therefore, an opinion on the basis of the analysis. But if we don't have that, I mean, outside of that, every person can actually be able to observe an electoral process.
And should observe, really. I think a lot of people feel like they're bystanders. I don't know how much more power one has beyond observing. I'm wondering what the most urgent structural change IEBC needs before 2027, in your view. What is that one structural change that needs to set in in order for people to trust the process in 2027?
Pro-people.
Pro-people.
Pro-people approach.
Vis-a-vis? Pro?
What we have, I mean, one of the reasons why I think Kenyans have become very disillusioned with public office is because the offices are not very friendly to them, and not their offices. They don't feel that these are their offices. I used to tell the previous chair that the day I see him in a Njurinjeke meeting, in a Kaya elders meeting, in a Kayole Chama women's meeting, talking to them about electoral process, I start understanding that you really are in that office at the behest of the people. But when they operate in ivory towers, then it's a supply-driven enterprise rather than demand-driven. Demand-driven is that the people want to see the results, show them their results. The people want a voter registration process which is friendly to them, so that even if there are market days and there are nomadic communities, you make the system for them. Register voters, educate the voters on the basis of where they are at. So for me, the one change is I don't want to call it a structural change. I want a posture change.
A posture change.
Yes, a posture.
Or posture rather.
Not posture.
Sorry,
posture.
posture.
The posture.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, the posture must be people friendly or pro people. Then if they do that, and you can see them reaching out, and I'll give you a very quick example. When Isaac Hassan led what we call the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, they came up with the issue of transmission of results, not really live transmission, but they had those displays that they were doing at the different polling stations every time there was an election. And people were very excited about that new development. Wow, we are going to be able to see these results ourselves. We're going to be processing them. That's the same excitement that met Kenyans the last election when he had that public portal where people are saying, so even Janet and Eric seated at NTV can be able to actually tally these results, and anybody, political parties and others, can actually be able to tally the process. We want that kind of a process. So their work is cut out in terms of trying to redeem the image of IEBC, number one, and secondly, to make this process exactly pro-people driven.
I feel like everything you've listed in terms of the excitement around technology sometimes is also misused. But speaking of posturing, I know you've always had an issue with how different political players talk about IEBC. Need to hear from some of them now.
I think, I don't know whether I've said this to you before, Mulle. I think that our big problem with IEBC is politicians, is the political class. Those that are participating in the election as competitors are the ones who want to paint a negative picture and image of the IEBC. They want to make it appear as if the people don't have trust and confidence in the IEBC. And I beg to differ. And this is why I say so. You observed the last several number of elections.
Yes.
You see, when people are turning up to the polling station on that morning of the election, are they coming there thinking, oh, my vote is going to be misused, stolen? They come there, they will go to the list that's been posted on a door, and they see my name starts with an O or it starts with an K, so where do I go? They go to a classroom, they are told, bring your ID, they produce their ID, they put their, fingerprint, they take the papers, they go to that booth, they vote, they walk out, happy, displaying, angalia, nimepiga kura, and they go home. Enda kwa shamba, enda kwa duka, enda kwa biashara, enda to wherever you're going. And then you go and chill. Until the politicians come and say, hii kitu imeibiwa. And that's when we start having an issue.
Yeah.
Before that, the citizens are...
They're okay.
The citizens are participating in an election. The citizen trusts that it's not the IEBC commissioner that they'll find. They'll find a person that they know locally is the presiding officer in the classroom. They see the agents, they know them. They see the polling clerks, they know them. They see the people who are seated there, the agents representing the various political parties, they know them. They move out. They know that these are the people who are going to participate in the counting and announcing of the results. They don't have an issue with those people.
Now, let me put it differently. So you're spot on in terms of a driver, the chief driver towards a lack of confidence. Because, I mean, the public must be getting information from somewhere. Where are they getting it from? They're getting it from the politicians. And I think I've also spoken to you before telling you that one of the biggest problems we have in terms of our politics is just political bad manners, that people really are very negative in terms of the process that we've had. My observation, and even from our own analysis of elections since independence, is that we have actually been improving. Technically, if you ask me, look at the technical aspects. Is it in terms of even the management, in terms of the entire process and how it is carried out? We have been making improvements over time. So if you look at my technical report, you'll find that I'm lauding quite a number of things. We are very happy about the public portal, for instance, in the last time. So we've been improving as far as that is concerned. But who are the people who carry the information about the process out there? One of the reasons why I'm saying that IEBC must stand its ground is that, first, it's an independent agency, and therefore they must be the ones who are authoring the issue, all electoral issues in the country. They need to be the ones who are speaking to those issues. They need to find a way. And one of the recommendations we'll be making is, can they have a very robust communication strategy? Because
they must own their story.
Yes, they must own their story. Because if they don't own it, and it goes with their other side, which is now the political side, and where the political bad manners is exhibited, then the story changes. And a lot of misinformation. The issue about, we had an election last time. A very good example is that our laws say that once an election is conducted and then announced and you have a dispute, you go to a court. Once the court makes, either it validates that election, it nullifies. It has nullified in 2017, it validated in 2022. Why would we continue with the narrative that there's something wrong about even the ruling of that? So where else do we go? Because we have structures, and we need to follow these structures and institutions that we have established ourselves. So I think it's a question of also, the politicians, for me, come in for a lot of criticism as far as the kind of purveyors of bad information, purveyors of negative information, hate speech, and all the other things that color the electoral process as negative. And therefore, you have a very big point there. But I would want the narrative to also be carried by also somebody else I'm paying taxes for. That is the IEBC. Right. So they also have now to carry that and be able to create clarity, or so they crystallize the issues that are out there. Because if you don't do that, the politicians are going to have their way, like they have been having. Right now, what narratives are we listening across the world, across the country? It is politicians.
Right. We've got a caller coming in.
I think they were meant to, but they let us know.
Not yet.
But also to react to... Oh, Collins, you're right. Mariam is right. Collins from Kisumu.
Okay. Morning, hello? Collins.
Yes.
All right. What's your question or comment for Mulle?
My comment is... Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Kenyans didn't think constructively while making their choice. Hello?
Go on. Yes.
Kenyans didn't think constructively before making their choice while casting their vote. Now they are crying out of their own mistakes. With politics, policies are good in formulation, but biased in implementation. So they should choose leaders based on capacity, not fame or resources.
Agreed. That's true, Collins.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's absolutely right. It's how we choose the leaders. But then even when we get to the ballot, there's a lack of trust there, to be quite honest. And you're right, a lot of it is fueled by the political class. But I'm also hearing like a contradiction of sorts, because here is the need for us to observe elections. And it doesn't mean that even in the most democratic of spaces, elections aren't observed. But here's a need to train observers and to observe elections. But then there's also now the other, push, which is like this thing works. And if there is a dispute, there's a way to go through it. So sometimes someone might ask, so which is which? Are we the ones safeguarding and watching and guaranteeing the integrity of this process as observers, as citizens, or do the systems work in and of themselves?
No, the systems are ours. The institutions are ours. We We are the ones who pay the police. We are the ones who pay the IEBC. We are the ones who put in place the judiciary. So these are our systems. So if we have a problem with the systems, I think we need to interrogate them and find out what are the issues. Are there structural problems? Are there administrative problems? Are there policy problems that need to be undertaken? Where we have issues like, the current debate about the police, for instance, you want to reform those processes. Once you reform them to the best of your ability, then you need to, respond, to be responsive to whatever then that institution does. If it requires to provide security, then you need to create the opportunity for them to be able to provide that security. So these are our, I don't see any contradiction, because they are our institutions, we make them. And I also agree with that caller, even in terms of the essence of what you're saying, that you choose the leaders.
Yeah.
That's another institution that we create in the country in terms of the leadership structure. We choose the leaders. And the best of, if you look from the MCA all the way to the president, those leaders,
right,
their postures are basically their Kenyan posture out there. These are our leaders. We choose them.
Their reflection.
They reflect how Kenyan society is structured and wired.
We're going into a break, and I think we'll come back and also just hear some of the different utterances that have been made by the leaders and react to them, because if we're talking about a free and fair process starting now, then it's to ensure that nothing compromises that. So we'll come back. You can also share your feedback. We'll sample some of it. It's coming up to 8:30. We're back in a moment. Never know. Some feedback just before we get reactions from some of what our leaders have said around IEBC. Jose says, does the IEBC Secretariat Governance team need to be reconstituted now that we have an entirely new set of commissioners on board? The Kikombe says, I struggle with this observer's role. It breeds the notion that democracy is about the procedure. I would rather observers for outcomes of the elected. I mean, who observes health and the economy? Interesting.
That should be your opposition, Kikombe. That is the work of the opposition.
Yes. Who we
But we don't have
quite
one.
have. Nope.
Our structure don't even have an opposition. It's basically parliament.
Right.
As a whole.
So we had those like the deputy president talk about telling of government
Professor
critics.
Kithure Kindiki has talked about the IEBC and the elections. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka has also talked about IEBC and the composition of the IEBC. Let's start with, I think, the Wiper leader and then come to the deputy president and hear what they've said about the IEBC.
With the IEBC commission now in place, we want to see urgent recruitment of voters. We want to see a new voter register, haraka iwezekanavyo, na vijana wa Gen Z, with those ones who are armed with their IDs. They should now be able to take out expeditiously kura zao.
Hii IEBC ama tume ya uchaguzi na mipaka ndio referee. The work of preparing for elections is for IEBC. It's not for people who are already in office. Sisi ni kukazana na kutimiza ahadi. IEBC nao watutayarishie uchaguzi.
Immediately, Kalonzo is saying immediately new voter register and all those things, and the professor as well. Is this part of the work that they have to do, or has this been ongoing? I mean, do we need to have commissioners in place for registration of voters to take place?
I think about a week ago, the Secretariat gave out a notice where they were upgrading the portal for registration of voters. So basically that means that the process is an ongoing process. Constitutionally, voter education and voter registration are continuous processes, so we don't need the commission to be in place. However, I think one of the issues which the challenge they've been having is the question of funds. That without somebody to be able to fight, when the funds are allocated through Parliament, without commissioners, it becomes a tall order for the Secretary to be able to rally and fight for the requisite funds that they're supposed to be having. So I think because of that lack of leadership, there have been some gaps in terms of having this as a continuous process, but it should be there. It should be a continuous process. Now that we have the commission in full bloom, my expectation is that then they should, create some level of excitement as far as the question of registration is concerned, voter education is concerned, and prepare for the elections. My only worry is you've showcased two clips there from politicians again taking over the role of speaking about elections rather than letting that arbiter or that referee be the one then talking.
Yeah.
So we need to see Ethicon being the one who is speaking about these issues. The politicians need to keep off and they wait for the elections. But they're campaigning. You know, one of the other issues, one of the bad manners that we have in this country is that we don't have a campaign period. The campaigns start when the last election ends, and it does not. And that is a very, and there's a High Court ruling which even made a ruling on the same in terms of when politicians should be campaigning. But you're still seeing them out there. All of these are all rallies geared towards 2027.
True. Ooh, we're living in interesting times, I like to say.
Yeah.
And you've talked about the communication strategy that the IEBC, should ideally employ to make sure that we have a feeling of trust in them and that they own their narrative. Practically, what does that look like from a build-up to the elections and election day and that whole entire period up to the transition of power? What does that look like?
For me, I think what I mean by a robust communication strategy is that IBC needs to make it first very conspicuous that they are going to set up that an office, good people on board, so can get some of the best. Media has always, we have been very happy about the media in terms of how they score in public, because a lot of the confidence that we see in Kenya in terms of the institutions, the media always comes up among the best. So if they could be able to borrow a leaf and work with the media houses, their communication office must be working with the other media houses, then it also needs to be a very inclusive process, because we have civil society, we have religious community, we have the Gen Zs themselves. There was an effort that IBC did in the last time where they had what they were calling youth coordinating committees and PWD coordinating committees. So this would be working with the communication office in terms of reaching out to different constituents. We need to see a much more robust engagement so that women feel that they are being included in the process. The marginalized communities feel that they are participating in this process. So there's somebody who sits inside IBC. I know these are structures they can be able to create. They can have extraordinary committees where they bring in other actors and then be able to use those other actors working with the media to be able to reach out to everybody across the country. So for me, I wouldn't want an internal communication. There's what we call an internal communication office, which basically dispenses issues and directives and which have been given by the commission. We need a much more inclusive communication process.
Someone is talking about the argument about live transmission of results. Let me get that question. Ask him about the IEBC arguing against live transmission of results in the Supreme Court, yet Kenyans whom they work for want live transmission.
Well, the Constitution is the one which sets up the rules in terms of how transmission of results is going to be done. Currently, as the law, and the IBC has to follow the law. If you remember the last time, again from the former chair, when they discussed the question about live transmission, they set up a portal. So the portal was live, basically, to the best of their ability. Once the polling results are announced, you are sending results to the public portal. But then I think what he means is the issue of now how the final results are then tallied, because the live transmission was happening, so you could access those results. But the question was whether IBC could be able to pronounce themselves in terms of the outcomes of the elections using transmitted results only. And that's where I think the complication comes in, because the law requires that there must be a verified process. And the verification usually happens with the hard copies, which come to bombers. So that's why bombers became a big issue. So the transmission does happen, and I don't think there have been those discussions about whether they would want to do this or the other, but the law as is currently states that polling results will be transmitted to a public portal, and then that public portal is accessible to the public. So, I mean, basically.
Then, I don't know, in other democracies, you see people call the winner provisionally. How do they do it in the US? What do they say? Because they'll tally.
It's just the media that does that.
Yes, it's the media, yes. And they'll do the tally and they'll call the winner, but there's a word they use,
they'll talk
right?
about projection.
Yes, projected winner.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So they're not calling the winner, but they're calling the projected winner. And then final results will be announced later. A situation like that happening here, and I know there was attempts to do that in the last elections.
Yes.
Didn't quite get to the end point. But what was the problem? What became the issue? And if the portal is reliable, we're waiting to verify with the hard copies, then is there a problem with saying projected winner is this and this person?
There's nothing which stops any institution in the country from making projections of results. As it is, ELOG does projections of the results. We use a system we call the parallel vote tabulation, and we have our results. It's just respect that you understand that IEBC has the mandate to announce and declare. Declare, announce is different from projections. So you can project results. Somebody can be able to project results. If the Gen Zs organize themselves in a way that they can be able to get all the results either from the public portal or from the polling station themselves. And remember, because IBC announces the Katiba Institute ruling declared that results are final at a polling station.
Yes.
That final result can be acquired or accessed by anybody, the media. Remember, it is pasted on the doors of the polling station. So anybody can get it. So the 46,229 forms can be accessed by anybody who has the tools to be able to process very quickly. So you can actually, the only problem is that you don't want to announce and you don't want to declare. However, in Ghana, and I was in Ghana last December, the opposition party called its own elections. And that was respected. They were able to access the results. They announced that they had won the elections. 30 minutes later, the ruling party accepted defeat. All this time without the election commission announcing any result. And when they did announce, which was about a day later, the results were consistent with each other. I mean, there were errors here and there, but it was basically consistent. So that goes on to show, if you create trust in an electoral process, if you also create accessibility and transparency in an electoral process, then even the entire work, and I think there's a conversation we had with Eric here about bombers and the importance of bombers at some point. If you created transparency, access, and openness in an election, you may not even require bombers. People will already know the results before, and
it talks about
you demystify the entire
bad manners
process.
you talked about.
Exactly.
The bad manners of our politics is what, for example, in all those elections, you find that you do not want to have such, because you'll have people actually declaring and laying out the red carpet at KICC.
Exactly.
Right.
And starting to say, you know what, we have won this election, we have all our results. Right?
Yes.
It's a bad manners. But I like what you've said, Mulle, in terms of, because these elections are announced at the polling station and they're final.
Yes.
Polling center.
Yes.
Station, actually.
Station.
And the polling station here is the classroom.
Yes.
Center is the school.
Yes.
Every classroom will have its own results and they'll be there. How can then the public, how can we do a crowdfunding or crowdsourcing of this that then makes it very transparent, that this is the result that is coming, blockchain it, so that everyone can see this is the result that's come from X and X class GW of Kibana Primary School.
Yes.
I always go back to
Gotta
Kibana.
throw in.
But we have got a call on the line.
Right.
Before you respond to this. Mike from Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning. Nauliza.
Yes.
If they like, suppose President dissolve Parliament side. The IEBC does this thing of boundary demarcation where after a given period, boundaries are supposed to be reviewed and then an election is constitution has come to come here. So in case the President dissolves Parliament right now, right? Does it stand still?
Atachafua game.
Do we still, does the IEBC need to still do the demarcation thing for an election? Because if the President dissolves Parliament right now,
Mike,
a by-election is to be held. Yes.
Thank you for that. And I think we had even responded to this one earlier when we had Dr. Ekuru our court. But Mulle will come in. The president does not have the power any longer to prorogue parliament.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is only in, following parliamentary calendars.
Right.
But only under certain circumstances. And this is if, for example, the parliament is not properly constituted and it has to come from the Chief Justice advising the president, this is the reason why this parliament is illegal.
Yes.
And that's when the president can act, right?
But I can rephrase Mike's question to, is the boundary delimitation necessary, or a necessary procedure before
elections?
elections?
Must it happen before the next election?
It is a very necessary, in my view, because it's a question of equality of the vote. Kenyans are increasing every day. The boundary delimitation, the census, national census indicated that we had grown from the last census. Yes. The idea behind equality of the vote is that you see, all constituencies are not increasing their numbers equally. So some of them, especially the urban centers, are having more people. So over time, it is a requirement that once you do a boundary, as a national census, then what follows logically is that you have 290 constituencies, divide that population by those 290 and get a quota, what they call the quota. Then on the basis of that, now you can be able to add usually some additions and subtractions depending on whether it's a rural or urban constituency, but it needs to be done. As things stand right now, we have a kind of a constitutional crisis in our hands, because that boundary delimitation exercise was taken by events last year.
Right.
We have some proposals in Parliament through the NADCO report that would redeem the issue, but although because again there is political bad manners issue keep cropping up even in terms of our legal proposals, because the proposal I think in NADCO is that it's going to extend the timeline so that we don't necessarily have to do it before 2027. Granted, it is not an easy exercise. If you were to do that boundary delimitation exercise between now and the elections, I think it would be on a roller coaster of activities, because people have to agree. It's a very emotive issue.
Right.
You don't want to make, the three of you could be in one constituency, and then the next day you wake up and you find that you've been,
someone has drawn a line.
Between the two of you or between two families. So it's usually a big issue.
And it could spill over
Yes.
the way you're looking at things. I also wanted to speak to some other bad manners, I think, when the Wajir woman, Rep. Fatuma Abdi, and we'll run that bite just now, and she said, let's actually listen to what she said and then respond to that.
Tunangojea tu debe iletwe, hata kama hatutakuwa na votes, tutamuibia, hiyo si siri.
Very unfortunate.
Yep.
These are very unfortunate statements coming from these leaders. And again, we say these are the leaders, the reflections of Kenyans. But I think action needs to be taken on some of these statements because that is bordering on hate speech. Talking about rigging, those are kind of, they need to explain. Intelligence should be able to pick those people out and explain, how do you intend to do this? Because that would be sabotage of a national process. So I don't know how they do it, but I think this kind of reckless speaking needs to be, controlled. Lazima idhibitiwe. Otherwise, we are going to get ourselves into a lot of problems come the election.
I'm still not convinced how we are protecting IBC from political capture. I don't know, it hasn't sunk in. Maybe it just needs a bit more time for things to sit, because we've just, sworn in the team, but the political capture is already beginning to play out.
Deep.
It's so deep, and I think that also speaks to the trust deficit. It speaks to even the whole process, what you talked about, even the credibility of something that's supposed to be automated. It's just political capture. And I think once that sets in from the very beginning, it sets a bit of a strange precedence. And
the honors and responsibility is on those commissioners. And that's why I started talking about them. Because and we've seen, in Ghana we had a commission chair called Dr. Afari Gyan, who stood out was very stoic in defending his own commission. Kivuitu, to some extent, if you remember Kivuitu, the former election commission of Kenya, you remember when he was making those arguments, I don't know whether these people are doing funny things with this, whether they are cooking these results. But he attempted also to be very stoic in terms of standing out. We need commissioners, we need a chair to be a very strong chair. If you want to deal with these politicians, they are all going to pass through him. They're going to go past through. If they want it, the president wants a re-election, it is IEBC. The MCA wants an re-election, it is the IEBC. So if IEBC was to stand very strong and send a very strong message, especially in these first months, that we are not going to be intimidated and we are going to do our job. And if you don't want us to do our job, we are going to gladly resign. If it comes to that, if they held their resolve. And we have some good minds there. Forget about the process they came in through, because it may have its own problem now. But we have them there, and we have the law. And if you look carefully at the IEBC Act, you look at the Elections Act, the Constitution itself, it vests upon them very great powers to be able to determine the process of elections in our country. So, apart from the big question of funding, which is the one that they have to, and they don't have to, because again, Parliament is a house of the people, isn't it? So if the house of the people is the one which determines their funding, then basically all these things should equalize. So it's a resolve issue. It's a resolve and a posture issue. If they show strength, there's a time IEBC, just one example, there's a time that the former IEBC, I remember when they tried to form a multi-sectoral body to manage the elections, where the High Court, the Chief Justice and other people were there. And then the former chair said, we are not going to sit in that because we feel other people are managing us. And this is an electoral process. Kenyans gave a lot of support to the commission at that particular time, because they were saying, yes, our commission is our commission.
Independent.
Independent. So it is that posture and resolve by those commissioners to say, we are going to control, we are going to hold these elections, we are going to manage them in a manner that shows that we are independent. But the minute they show weakness and we have a predatory political class, they'll be finished.
May I propose the other way, the other approach then, that Kenyans own this commission and the commissioners, right?
Exactly.
That Kenyans come out to speak and say, so we have an IEBC in place, and Ethecon is the chair of this commission, Fahima is the vice chair, and these are the commissioners, and everybody else shut up.
Exactly.
Okay, and so that gives the confidence to Ethecon to actually come out to speak, knowing that I came in, I was elected through a political process, because that's what it was. It was a political process. But now I have the people on my side.
Exactly.
And gives him the confidence to come to those barazas that you're saying, because he'll feel that the people have organized a baraza and told him, Ethecon, siku fulani kuja Kilifi.
Yes.
Kuja uangeleshe wazee. Siku fulani go to such and such a place. I think if the people
owned the process,
owned this commission, then we can isolate the politicians.
In fact, one of the challenges I would want to give, because the most impressive community at the moment is the Gen Zs. I wish they were to hold them, to sit with them, organize a session, whether that is going to be virtual or not, but organize a session. If the new commission even made that move themselves, that would be a bonus move, because these Gen Zs will be telling them, these are the issues we have a problem with. We want to be registered, we want to be in this, we want to see this level of openness. That conversation, if you start that conversation, and I think, Eric, you've given the blueprint for how the next process should be. If they were to follow that script, I can assure you they will be in control of this process all the way, and the politicians will have nothing to say about it.
And then beyond that, come up with those systems of monitoring and observing the election. Say, who are these people who've been accredited to be the election observers in here? Who are these who have been accredited to be so and so? So we know you.
And I wanted to add, because you raised an issue about the observers, there's no law anywhere in this country which stops us from having observers everywhere. Accredited. IEBC does not have a ceiling of the number of observers that they are supposed to be accrediting. All we need to do is to create an opportunity for people to be educated in terms of what they need to look out for. Of course, we can't go and all crowd a polling station, because that stops the work from being done. But we can get as many people accredited. At the very least, we can get an observer in every polling station. At the very least, the resources allowing. All you need to do, and you talked about crowdsourcing, because it's something that works very easily. All you need, just because the results will be pasted on a polling station, have somebody there who can actually be able to relay that information. And then now you can now be able to process it in a manner that we can be able to get alternative results, and in a very
credible way.
Yeah, credible way.
I'm thinking practically as we go in. A lot of young people have said, you know what, this election I will be there at the polling station counting. Wakicount me na count. Wakicount me na count. That is the willingness and the openness to be an observer, without perhaps having the structures and the correct ways. How do young people, actually Kenyans of all ages, get training and then become election observers and get accreditation from the IEBC? What's the process like, so that we can be part of this process, the way we're saying, own this process?
Yeah, so first we are, like I said, nobody is barred from participating in those elections as an observer. Secondly, from an observer point of view, we are setting up a virtual platform that is going to give, be able to train anybody who can be able to access the platform, the basic information that you need to understand. And I think we have had a number of spaces with young people, and we are telling them we are going to create a platform where you get all this information, what you need to look out for in a polling station, a simple checklist that you can be able to use to be able to tick what the needs, what you are seeing in the polling station, to be able to speak to it. So we are going to provide, and I think quite a number of civil society organizations who are in this particular space also working towards the same. So we'll educate and we'll ensure you don't need the full training. All you need to do is just access the information and access the tools that allow you to be able to interrogate the process at a polling station. And remember,
is there a timeline for this platform?
No, it's actually work in progress right now. It should be even up anytime. We have been working on it from the start of the year.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
A timeline, and then the accreditation bit is now. It's the IEBC that accredits observers.
Yes.
So then how does one get accredited by the IEBC?
Just apply application. Just apply to the IEBC.
Can ELOG facilitate this?
Yes, what we usually do, and we have done that, I think we are the ones who deploy the largest number of people during an election. And what happens is that through this mashirika ambayo we are working with, we are able to tell them, can you get as many observers as possible? So if Gen Zs are in part of that particular group, anybody who applies through ELOG will be able to get accreditation, so long as we can be able to vouch for them. Say they have the right information, they have the right tools, and they can actually be able to go to the ground.
We're about to say goodbye to you, but I don't want to end without this question from Moniki on Facebook, who says, about transparency, I had, observers and election officials are taken through an oath of secrecy.
No, we don't. We used to sign, it used to be signed, we petitioned against it, because why would we be held in secret and our information is supposed to be relayed to the public? So we stopped. The law was changed.
Okay.
But I think the IEBC officials themselves, I think party agents, they go through an oath of secrecy, but observers don't.
Why?
The idea is usually to protect information inside a polling station, especially things that they may come across. You remember, party agents are both monitors and observers. There's a difference. Monitors can interrogate, can even stop a process. An observer cannot stop the process. You can only be able to talk about it. And that's why we were saying, because ours is just information, why are you stopping us? We don't have more powers than that. So they have oath of secrecy. The IBC officials, of course, have that because they are tied to a system of how the information will be relayed to the commission.
Mulle Musau is from the elections observation group, ELOG, and he's been our guest. We'll keep engaging with him as we head towards the election. Keep it here for that. In the next hour, we talk to a Kanu youthful leader from Kanu. 9 a.m. Good morning.